Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, America's Cup fans. Welcome to Barcelona. Welcome to the Inside Tack, the Ineos Britannia debrief of the day's racing. Today was race day number 3, where we had America's Cup race number 4, making up for the race that we lost yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, when the breeze dropped below the wind limit and Ian Murray cancelled the racing early, knowing that today's forecast was good. Today, to talk through the race, we've got Ian Jensen, the Goobster, and Giles Scott. Ian, you were up in the tower today. Tell people at home what conditions we had.
We had pretty good conditions, actually. We had pretty stable 10 knots for the race, and it was just slowly building through the race. So perfect sailing conditions for these boats, and yeah, a little bit windier than we had in the first couple of days. And
it was kind of, we've talked about sea breezes and thermal effect. It was kind of quite overcast, wasn't it? It was out of the northern kind of quadrant, so it wasn't like that building sea breeze, it was a building gradient, right?
Yeah, building gradient. It was supposed to go around a little, I think we had it going around a little bit further to the right than it ended up going.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of 10 knots building to 11 or so. Just a slow, gradual increase through the day.
And Giles, during the race itself, as you're on chase forward tracking the data, sort of much variance in wind speed, left to right, and much shift range, or not really?
Not a heap, no. There was maybe a slight favour to the right. It was what we were thinking before the race, but not a lot. Pretty steady.
Okay, pretty steady. Right, so we'll get straight into it. Let's dive straight into the pre-start, where we entered on starboard. Team New Zealand entered on port. So obviously you enter at 2 minutes 10 on port, and you enter at 2 minutes on starboard. So let's dissect this one, Giles.
Yeah, so we're starboard entry here, reasonably standard setup. Took the option to jibe to follow. The game ended up quite deep in the box. You can see we're in the bottom corner here. Team New Zealand trying to kill as much time as possible to try and set up on a shutout ley line for the starboard end. We made quite a nice call and decided to go back here and hold off. It's a bit of a critical moment here to decide if you think you're in trouble of not being able to get in at the starboard end, or if Team New Zealand were a little bit early for it, which, as it turns out, they were, and we ended up with quite a nice start here, with a reasonably wide right start, slight overspeed on Team New Zealand. Maybe gave a smidge away on the bias, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Yep. By the time the yachts got to the first boundary, it was super close. So maybe a slight shift left there.
And there's a massive moment in that pre-start, I guess, as we're about to see here, when Team New Zealand turn up. Yeah. Where we think their position is and what we're going to do next.
Yeah, to be honest, right now on this freeze frame is kind of the critical decision point for both yachts. Team New Zealand have got a decision to make if they're going to continue to try and soak low and kill, or to turn up immediately, and they take the option for the latter. We decide that we're going to gap off to the right, and then have a moment to reassess. Yeah, and the result here is both boats get reasonable starts, but slight overspeed and nice gap for us to the right here.
And Gooby, we were, as Giles said, we were kind of both early. We assessed that Team New Zealand didn't have a shut, so they couldn't shut us out of the committee boat end. So we had a wide right, and there was 30 seconds of hovering before we both did a bow down and a build. In trimmer's world, if you're the starboard trimmer, in our case today, that's Bleddyn Mon, our young Welsh legend, there is a lot to happen in a very short amount of time, right, in terms of getting the boat trimmed up for that overspeed we saw off the line, and then settling into VMG mode.
Yeah, that's right, Fred. I mean, we actually come in a little bit wider on angle than Team New Zealand here, which is, I think, where the overspeed comes from. So we managed to build, I don't know, probably 65 degrees true or so. And we really can take that extra speed and turn it into either bow forward or height, which really helped us come into that boundary in a good spot with those guys. Yeah, for the trimmer, I guess when you're bearing away to build the speed, you're needing to ease the sails a little bit and go a little bit outboard as the apparent comes back. And then, as you well know, Freds, as you do that wind up off the line, all those sails have got to come back on, and we're talking some pretty big loads, so that the cyclores really play a key part in getting all that gear back on.
And you could kind of see there at the bottom of the replay that we're playing the total power for the cyclores just turning up off the bottom of the box is like over 2,000 watts a crew. So obviously each one of the 4 cyclores are having to live at 500 watts just to drive us up off the bottom of the box, and that's let alone before the biggest power of the race, which, as you said, Gooby, is off the line as you oil thieves are moving everything. Giles, we then went out to the left-hand boundary, a bit of a drag race, as often is rattled out in sailing commentary, to go to that left-hand boundary. Team New Zealand got to that boundary first and tacked, and then we tacked just in front / underneath them.
Yeah, I suppose the Kiwis here are trying to get as much bow forward as possible. We're trying to position the yacht so that we get a nice lee bow. You can see here that the lee bow's executed quite nicely. Team New Zealand do quite a nice job at building. They get flicked off and they have to tap back. And I think what they do quite nicely is they're able to tack at speed.
Yep.
So it's one of those ones where it's advantage GBR, and we did a nice job of getting rid of them. But equally, they've taken their medicine quite well, as it were.
And Goobs, did it surprise you as it surprised me? Is they, as Giles said, they tacked off, had a short amount of time back to that left-hand boundary. For argument's sake, let's call it 20 seconds for a build here, maybe less looking at that shot, and then attack back and relatively small losses.
Yeah, it was actually pretty impressive. That first tack they did out of the boundary, they managed to almost get to speed. I think they got to 29 knots here before they had to peel out. And you can see that because we've exited the tack really high, we're a little down on speed. So I guess when New Zealand exit this next tack, we've got to do a rebuild and they've got to do a rebuild. So it's not, we probably get 1 tack ahead because they've got to quickly tack back on the boundary, but I wouldn't say it's a full 2 tacks ahead from this scenario.
Yes, fair enough. Then we both had, from this point, from when we forced them to do their double tack on the left boundary, they tacked back. We had a long port. We tacked off boundary. They charged up and ducked. We went to the left-hand side. They went to the right-hand side, and we came to the first gate, the first windward mark, very close. And we had, we went round the top gate together. Giles, just talk us through this Mark 1 or this gate 1.
Yeah, so really quite nip and tuck here. You can see we go for a duck here. Team New Zealand take the choice to lead the tack and on a tight ley line for the right turn. We're over speed and coming charging, but there's no way we're going to get round them before the right turn comes up. So yeah, the result is a Simo right left turn from both yachts, and yeah, all to play for at this point.
That's cool, just quietly.
Yeah, it's a really cool shot, and that's a level boat race at that point.
Yeah. Well, and it remained a level boat race for the whole of the first downwind. Goobs, you're going to have to remind me of what happened, but I think we came back and they were coming back on starboard halfway down the first downwind, and we luffed up, went around their transom. Yeah,
that's right. So I guess the 2 boats were very evenly matched, and it actually ended up down the bottom of the course with both boats doing a jibe roundup.
Yeah. So we were set up on ley line for a left turn, and they came in, jibed in front of us, took that option away, forcing us to do a jibe roundup. So they were going to do a jibe roundup in front of us, forced us to do a jibe roundup, went around the leeward gates together.
Yeah, so I guess they wanted the right-hand side of the course looking upwind. So I guess they're in a position where they can pick there really, because they're just a little advanced on us. So they could have gone straight, and we would have gone straight, and we would have had to split the other way. But they opted to take that left-hand mark to head out to the right, which meant that for us to get any leverage, we do the jibe roundup and we go towards the left. It's pretty cool that the boats were that close at the top and then that close at the bottom.
It was cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Giles, you said you were tracking the wind throughout the day. You said kind of talk about liking the right. Team New Zealand went to the right at the bottom of that second upwind and took what was a couple of second lead, and the next time we came back together, it was, I don't really know, I didn't watch it on TV, but it looked like a lead that they could then start planting us and defend.
Yeah, they got a little jump and got that critical 150, 200 meters ahead, which is, you know, quite a nice, I suppose, comfortable leading position to be in. Whether or not that was because of the right shift out of the bottom or them getting a slightly better roundup at the bottom gate, I don't know. There's probably a bit of both there, to be honest.
Yes, I think, and from that point, it was hard for us, and there was no way round, and we got into that world in the third lap of maybe taking tactical decisions to get a split, hoping that a shift or a bit of pressure would come our way, and it didn't.
Yeah, and the distance deltas aren't massive. The races have remained pretty. I mean, it has drifted a bit. I admit that. Like losses of about what did we lose by about 400 meters or so, but I think the error counts are so small. Neither team are making many errors. Like we were seeing boats falling off the foils, big touchdowns 4 weeks ago or so, and now, of course, you got the two teams that have made it through to the final, and there's just very little errors, and the errors that are creeping in are very minute, to the point where they're probably not that visible on TV.
Yeah. To the naked eye, it's not visible, and we have a feeling on board. Well, we know on board when we do an 8 out of 10, let's say leeward mark or windward mark rounding, and you're like, that didn't feel quite right, and you go back and review it, and you're like, you can see that one windward or leeward gate rounding can be the race.
Yeah, and the reality is that in every manoeuvre there's a second here, a second there, but I think that's always going to be the case to some degree. It's just how many of those seconds you give up.
Yeah. Yes, and Team New Zealand went on to defend well and win the race. They won race 4. They have gone 4-0 up. And yeah, we have a rest day tomorrow and then 2 races on Wednesday, but we'll get on to the forecast for that later on. We will have a quick question, and this is something that we touched about earlier in the week, Giles. And it's a question from Viva Max Gurus. Does that sound about right? Yeah, we'll say that. Strategic approach, and it's something that we talked around. Strategic approach versus Luna Rossa versus Emirates Team New Zealand. How much do you have to change your approach, our approach, to face each team?
I think we have certainly had to adjust to a new strategic approach from an opponent, and I think that's always going to be the case. I think what we've seen from Luna Rossa certainly hasn't surprised us. As expected, they're slick. They've got very clean manoeuvres, very small losses for jibes, tacks. They're very happy to throw the boat around, put cover on, brake, make the hard manoeuvre at gates to keep cover. Yeah, I mean they're a slick outfit, and I think the pre-starts are another. I think where the eye gets drawn to really, and you can see how comfortable they are throwing the yacht around. Not necessarily today, but maybe more yesterday. And yeah, we're absolutely adjusting our strategic approach to try and match that as best we can.
And Goobs, do you kind of second that? And my vibe is that New Zealand are very happy that you haven't seen through the round robins and the semis and the finals to do a tough manoeuvre to shut off our split to a favoured side. That's a common theme throughout the racing so far.
Yeah, that's right. Their manoeuvre losses are very low, and it looks a little bit like they'd prefer to do the extra manoeuvre to make sure that we were going to take the same gate or not have very much leverage, where I think with Luna Rossa they'd prefer to take the gain by doing one less manoeuvre than the boat behind.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach. I guess Luna Rossa were looking to make a gain, whereas New Zealand are quite happy to stay the same amount ahead as long as they're going exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So that's a good summary, a very good summary. And Goobs, no racing tomorrow. I'd imagine both teams will be out training because the sea state is building a bit overnight and into the next 2 days. What's our forecast for the next race day on Wednesday, chap?
Yeah, so it's still going to be light to medium. It's 8 to 13 knots.
Yep.
But we're getting some more sea state.
Okay.
So that's gonna be a little bit of a different thing for us.
Yep.
be a little bit trickier with the boat handling, and it'll add another element, and we'll get to see how the boats compare with a bit more sea state.
Yeah, and Giles, so far we've had 3 race days. We've been on, I think we've been on the J1 or the J2 in all 3 days, like sub 11 knots, for argument's sake, and flattish water. So as Gooby said, a bit of a different look to things on Wednesday potentially.
Yeah, I think so, and I think with a bit more seaway around, that'll be the biggest change. Team New Zealand did get onto their J3 today, which is actually quite similar to our J2. But yeah, I think a bit of a change up is certainly going to be good for us, and you know, we know that as we keep saying, the Kiwis are slick, but they're beatable, and we've just got to get a few more things right, and it won't take much to tilt the scales there, I don't think.
There you go. I think that's a good place to leave it, chap. Wise words as always from G. Scott. The bigger the challenge, the bigger the reward, and we are up against the challenge. We're enjoying the racing, we're getting faster every day. Our next race day is on Wednesday, and please join us there in the evening for the Inside Tack, where we'll review those 2 races.